We were among the top 3 players in cocoa. Today, we're number 7 in cocoa production. We fed ourselves with rice because then it was only a festivity food. Today, it's on the diet of every family almost every day of the week. And we began importing rice to the tune of $5 million a day for nearly 30 years. $5 million a day for nearly 30 years. We began to import vegetable oils and milk and sugar, cookies and spending virtually everything we earn from oil and gas to import goods into Nigeria, which we as a country should be able to produce. And how can we get out of it? For those of you who are here and are interested in agriculture, I'm talking to you because I'm a farmer myself, primarily a farmer. I have had a few years and so on in politics, in and out, but I have never quit agriculture. I have made my mistakes. I have suffered, but I have learned from my suffering to improve on what I do. For those of you who want to come into agriculture, please remember what I'm going to tell you now. The opportunities are all. We are struggling, and very successfully too, to meet our requirements in rice. As at today, we consume 7 million tons of rice per annum. And to give you an idea of what a million tons is, a million tons of rice will fill up 33,310 trailers. If you line the trailers up with no space in between, they will stretch from Lagos to Benin, 450 kilometers. 1 million tons times 7. So are you interested?
Hello. Please, this is an important announcement. Hello.
If you are interested in rice,
Honorable Commissioners, the Chief Executive of Paracetamol, the Directors of the Ministry, please go to the room I am directing here. If you look at this direction, there is a special breakout room for all the Chief Executives of Paracetamol, all the national fellows of the university.
how many of you are interested in rice? Investments in rice, either growing or milling or marketing. How many of you are interested in palm oil? We need to plant 1 million hectares more to meet our national demands in palm oil. 1 million soccer fields. So we can stop importing from Malaysia and Indonesia. We were number 1 in the world. We are now at the bottom of the ladder. How many of you are interested in milk production? We spend nearly $1 billion a year importing milk, powdered milk, low quality milk. From where? From New Zealand and Holland. Holland is a country of just 17 or so million people, 13 million people. New Zealand is even smaller. They supply all the milk. And because there's a shortage of milk, a large number of our children are grossly malnourished and stunted. They need a pint of milk a day. How many of you would like to grow goats? Goats. There is a demand in the Middle East, 120,000 carcasses of goat meat per week. How many of you are interested in cassava products? Ethanol, industrial starch, syrups, and sweeteners. Nigeria is the largest producer of cassava in the world, 40 million tons. We are the largest producers of yams in the world, 70 million tons. We account for 80% of the total production of yams worldwide. How many of you are interested in producing essential oils? You know something called lemongrass? Lemongrass, which we grow around hedges in our villages. You can extract oil from lemongrass. 1 liter sells for 70,000 naira. A 2-ton plant is sold in India for 27 million naira. You can plant it in a village, organize our growers, and make tons of money. How many of you are interested in castor oil? I am a castor oil producer. This year I have 8,000 farmers growing castor seed for me, and by next year I'll have 18,000. Castor oil is an essential oil. If you Google it, it is called a strategic military oil in the United States. It's in heavy use in the cosmetics industry and in medical production of medical produce. How many of you are interested in exporting hibiscus flower, otherwise called zobo? Last year, we exported $35 million worth of hibiscus flower to Mexico. How many of you want to export sesame seed to China, or to Turkey, or to India? How many of you want to export white sorghum to China? We can go on the list of items available in the agri sector. But what are the challenges? One of them is a near disaster which happened to us in this country in 1986. It was called the Structural Adjustment Program, not only to Nigeria but to Africa. We were compelled or persuaded to devalue our currency every week for 32 years. The most outrageous thing I ever saw. I am not an economist, but economics is 90% common sense. And I'm not the only critic. Jeffrey Sachs, who was the advisor to Kofi Annan on economic matters, and Paul Krugman, America's Nobel Prize winner in economics, both condemned SAP as the worst assault on Africa since the slave trade. It will take this country a long time to recover from it. Never mind what you hear about this regime not having done this or that. Never mind what you hear that incoming people will do miracles in 1 week. If you believe them, you believe there's ice cream in hellfire. There is nothing they can do overnight that we're not doing. Interest rates went up from 3% then to where they are today, between 25 and 30%. How can you invest at 30%? What is it you're producing that can give you profits and capacity to repay your loan at 30%, even if you are producing cocaine? These are hard realities which you must face and recognize. These are the problems we inherited, and these are the things we're trying to tackle. These are the reasons why we can't create jobs. Government is trying. How do you create jobs if you can't build a factory? Government alone cannot be a creator of jobs. Government is primarily an enabler. And we have proved it in rice production. We have proved it by investments in infrastructure, power, roads and rails. We lowered interest rates for agriculture to 9%. And we began an anchor borrowers program. The impact between November 2015 and now is that we have cut down on rice importation by 90%. Because farmers have never had credit so cheap. But we haven't finished. An executive director of the Bank of Agriculture is here. He may talk to you as we go on. We are trying to privatize the Bank of Agriculture. We are encouraging farmers, and those of you who are out there who will come back, to buy shares in the bank. We shall unload 40% of the shares of the Bank of Agriculture to the public, especially to farmers. We are targeting an interest rate of 5%. Why? Because we are the only country in the world that I know, in fact, the continent rather, in Africa, in the continent called Africa, where people are attempting to produce food at interest rates of 18 to 25%. What is the interest rate in the United States on agriculture? What is it in China? What is it in Europe? Not higher than 3%. So how do you do it at 25% in Africa and produce food as cheaply as they do in these countries? How do you do it when there is no subsidy to agriculture, which is what they do over there? Virtually every cow on a ranch in Europe enjoys a subsidy of between 4 to 6 euros per day, even when they produce milk and pour in the drainage. Here, your cows have no support. The herdsmen march from Maiduguri to Lagos. The cow loses 40% of his weight. The Nigerian cow is the lowest producer of milk on planet Earth. 1 liter of milk per day. An equivalent in the United States or Europe is 50 liters of milk per day. How can you match them? Your quality of beef is like plastic. The cows walk too much. Some of them have diseases, the bovine TB, which you can pass on to human beings because they roam and have no access to veterinary services. Before I came here, I had a delegation of farmers on my farm. They came to see me. They have planted so much rice, they can't harvest. Harvesting rice is tedious work. You bend and cut and then beat it on wood to separate the grains from the stalk. And then you winnow and put in sacks. That's the labor we pass on to women. They work. And yet, in the Bureau of Statistics, nobody mentions jobs on the farms as jobs. And I ask a question, who works harder than a farmer? Who? In the sun and the heat. So, brothers and sisters from the diaspora, welcome home. For those of you who are interested in agric, I must say this to you. This administration has made it a viable business. We will give you the support you need through land clearing, cheaper credit, and inputs which we give to farmers across the land. We are looking at new crops. You can go into coffee, for instance. If you are in the south, you grow what they call the Robusta. If you are in the northeast, from Plateau, stretching to Adamawa and Taraba, you can plant the Arabica. Coffee is probably the most traded commodity apart from petroleum. There is money in it. However, of all the coffee and cocoa grown in the world, the total business in both is $100 billion each. You know how much of it gets to the farmers in Africa? $5 billion. 5%. Because we don't process. We ship raw materials. So as you're coming back, think of machinery that can add value to certain things. Tomato paste, we import $400 million a year. Sugar, we are working hard to increase sugar production at home, but we buy quite a large quantity from Brazil. Cotton production died here. We were competitors with India and Pakistan and China. Today, the cotton industry is dead. Textiles are gone. They were the largest employers of labor in the past. But just last week, we launched a new variety of cotton which can yield 3.5 tons per hectare. So we're going back to the textile industry. Are you interested? Even just ginning? Think of it. Do you want to produce milk? If you know nuclear physics, don't be a subject he knows nothing about. You can't keep cattle without grass. And grass is not grass. There are special grasses. And let me remind you, those from the south, you don't have to be a Fulani man to keep cows. 10 hectares of land is more than enough to keep 100 cows. They don't have to roam. feed them well, treat them well, and you'll be richer than the Fulani man with 300 cows marching up and down. So, I told you I'm a farmer. I probably have the largest fish farm in Abuja, maybe one of the largest in the country. We have 5 ponds. We're expanding to 200 ponds in the next few years. Each contains 40,000 catfish. I'm also a castor oil producer. There's money in it. India does $4 billion a year from castor oil. The castor seed grows here wild from Lagos to Niger. If you're interested in agri, this is the time to come home and do it. This government has made it a top priority. This government is persuading state governments in the country to give it support. This government recognizes that a tree is as strong as its roots, and that the roots of the country are the rural areas. We are the first government in history to take life and wealth back to the rural communities. And I'll round up by telling you a story. Kebbi State, Ebonyi, Anambra, Enugu, Nasarawa, Jigawa, Kano are the biggest producers of rice in this country now. They got cheap credit for the farmers. In the north, this year, 56,000 pilgrims went on Hajj. 90% of them bought their own tickets and their wives from the sale of wheat and rice. They didn't depend on their governors. And the governor of Kebbi State told me a story. He invited farmers from his constituency to come and see him. And they wrote him a letter. Your Excellency, the next time you want us to come and see you, give us a long notice. We are too busy harvesting rice and wheat. We can't see you now. This confirms a theory I've always held, that democracy in Africa will remain a fallacy until you stabilize the rural areas. Until farmers can say to a governor, we are too busy to see you now. Otherwise, it will always be a cash and carry business. You hear of vote buying. Vote buying. You see adverts on TV, don't sell your vote. Can't work. How many of you have read, of course you must have, Romeo and Juliet? When Romeo was about to commit suicide, he went to a medicine seller. He said, give me that drug. The seller said, no, it's against the law. And Romeo said to him, there's poverty written all over your face. Don't obey the law, obey your poverty. Sell me the drug, I'll give you the cash. And the drug seller sold it to Romeo. On election day, a voter who is starving to death for 1,000 naira will gladly sell his vote for 500, no matter how much you preach to him. On the other hand, a farmer with 2 million naira in the house from the sale of rice, or palm oil, or cassava, or cocoa, or coffee, or yams, cannot be persuaded to sell his vote for a small bag of rice or a little bit of onions and little cash which politicians offer. The real change in the mentality of our people and in the economic fortunes of Nigeria are being carried out by this administration through agriculture, infrastructure development. This is what will last long, not the cosmetic decorations you're going to see in the next few weeks. Welcome home. Welcome to agriculture. God bless you. And if you need any help, come and talk to us.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Honorable Minister for Agriculture, Chief Audu Ogbe. A round of applause. I think he has said a lot about diversifying our economy, what they have done in this administration since 2015. I think that's unprecedented, especially reaching out to our rural farmers. The Anchor Borrowers Program, for example, has been hugely successful. Thank you so much, sir. And I would formally recognize our Honorable Minister of Power, Housing and Works, Mr. Babatunde Fashola. A warm welcome, sir. SAN. Thank you so much for coming. And on this note, we will have a slight entertainment for the lady, Mrs. Toyoshi Akinade. Apologies for the pronunciation in the name. Please come to perform for this wonderful crowd of diaspora Nigerians. And I know that you've listened to a lot of issues, a lot of, policies, programs that this government have, embarked on, and how you can come here and invest, because that is why you're here today. There will be opportunity to ask questions, so please keep them. Keep them holding on, so that at that appropriate time you can ask and then see how you can key into what is happening in this government. Thank you very much. Mrs.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. His Excellency, the Vice President, everyone, all protocols duly observed. I want to say a very big thank you to my big mommy, Abike, for this privilege. God bless you, ma. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
podium, sir. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think I've got it. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And if you permit me to just repeat after Audu, let me say, welcome home, Diaspora. But really, before I got up, I was trying to check what the temperatures are in Europe now. And I think that for those of you who don't like the cold like me, this must be the place to be. You know, my father tried to keep me in the UK when I was 13, and he just couldn't understand how a 13-year-old boy didn't want to live in the UK. I said, just bring me back to Nigeria. There's so much room to play football, and it's not cold. So, welcome back home anyway. And I want us to give another resounding applause to my colleague Chipaudu for that very informative presentation. And I think that we should listen to him more. He's one of those who not only knows what he's doing, he's actually doing what he preaches. What he didn't tell you is how much money he makes from castor oil. A lot more than he gets from our monthly salary of 900,000 naira. A lot more than that. And you see, he used to wear a bow tie when we first started. So when he realized that his rice was not growing, he got rid of the bow tie and started dressing like a farmer. But really and truly, I think if we all look back, especially those that are Nigerians, and I welcome those who are looking to play in our market, but I think all of the elements have converged to make this place the place to be. The city of love, Paris, is now in anger, and Britain is visiting very rapidly. We've had a prime minister, we've had a prince, and they are here for a reason. And those who look beneath those visits will know why they are here. This is where the opportunities really are in the short, medium to long term. My brief was to speak on energy, but it seems that there are other issues that concern me, and I'm just going to quickly highlight where I think what the realities are and leave you to make what informed decisions you want to make. But let me start from where Chipaudu stopped about taking money to the rural areas. And this is not an accident, it is a conscious policy of development. You will see, I will speak about real estate and infrastructure and the connections. You will have heard or you will have read reports suggesting a certain amount of deficit of housing in Nigeria. But I have asked those who lay claim to that result to show the empirical basis for those numbers. And one of the things I have sought to do is never to repeat what I cannot verify. So I won't repeat that number here because there is no empirical basis for that number. But whatever that number is, and some of you have heard it, ask yourself if there is any state in this country where there are no empty houses. Right in the FCT here, you see empty houses. Unoccupied houses. And those who put out that number should tell us whether they have deducted those numbers from the deficit they put in the public domain. I have traveled all of the states in this country, and there are empty houses. One of the things that speaks to first is that there is a mismatch between what is built and what people want to live in. It also speaks to a mismatch between what is on offer and what people can afford. So there is a gap of acceptability and affordability. And I will tell you what we've done about that. But I just want to lay the foundation for what I want to address. Then you will find out that the pressure for housing supply is only in the urban centers. Only in the urban centers. And I stand to be challenged or corrected about this. In the rural areas, what you will find more are empty homes. Why? Because they are moving to the urban centers in search of the opportunities. So, you can do many things. We can continue to build houses in the urban centers. But there's a very strong school of thought that construction alone of houses won't solve the urban crisis. And so what this government has been advised to do by Audu Ogbe, myself and a couple of others, is to take the jobs back to where the people are coming from. So that is why agriculture is not just about food security. It is about redistribution of resources and opportunities to the place where they are in the most dire need. But it is not just agriculture, it is also construction. Today, this country is able to say that it is constructing at least one road in every state of this country. At least one. And we have 365 roads now under construction. So all of the projects that had stopped in the past are substantially, if not totally, back up. Now, out of those 365 roads, 244 were inherited. They had been awarded since 2001, but they were not funded and completed. We have added another 121 in 3 years. So for those who say that we are slow, I say to them, our results are not slow. Because if you do 121 by 3 and you do 244 by 16, you will see that our run rate is faster. So you will have roughly about 40 kilometers per road over 3 years and 15 kilometers per road or something like that over 16 years. But what is happening is that the quarries are back. So where are quarries? You will find quarries in Maitama. They are in the rural areas where people are mining laterite, they are mining sand, they are mining rocks, they are mining building materials. And what that does is to catalyze not just labor, but it is catalyzing transportation, because you now have to move the materials to batching sites and batching plants where it is mixed with cement and concrete for the development and construction of our roads. So that is happening as we speak. What is also happening is that because of the gap we saw in the housing area, we decided to conduct a national survey. And we worked not only with architects and builders in the ministry who are from different parts of Nigeria, but also those in the private sector. And we went around state by state, sampling what type of houses people would like. And the results were quite informative. And they revealed to us why some of the houses built in the 1979 to 83 National Housing Scheme remain unoccupied today. Those houses did not respond either to the need culturally or to the land use type or to the affordability demands of some parts of the country. So the good news is that the feedback shows that Nigerians do not mind to live in 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom houses. And I see my brother from Rwanda looking at me with some rapt attention. I think he has a story to share about housing problems, because I think they had that kind of problem too sometime in the past. But the story is that 1, 2, 3-bedroom are not the issue. It is how you build them. In the northern part of the country, they don't mind them if they have courtyards at the back. If they're in bungalows, they can gather out at night. And what we call conveniences, they're cultural issues that prevent men and women from sharing. Are those issues, are those cultures right and contemporary? I leave you to the argument, but they are today's realities. So if you really want people to live in those, you must build to satisfy some of those demands. Further down south, because of the constrained land space, they don't mind to live in blocks of flats. And that is what we are now implementing in a pilot we're building in 34 states. A pilot to test for acceptability and affordability in 34 states of Nigeria currently going on. But what does that do again? It takes money to some of the underserved communities of Nigeria. And on all of those sites where I go, no less than 1,000 people are working on each side, fabricating, welding, mixing, raw labor, also supplies for food. So we're buying some of Chief Audu Ogbe's rice and all of those things to give nourishment to the men who are doing the hard work. And if you go and ask those people, they will tell you very, very clearly and unhesitantly that this government has delivered for them. I remember one, let me share 2 stories. I met a couple in Oyo. Husband was a mason. The wife was a caterer. They came from Lagos to the site. And the husband builds, the wife supplies the amala and the begiri and all of that the laborers. And that's how they keep the family going. I met one mason in the Kaduna side. His name is Ado. I remember that name because I have a staff who also bears that name. And Ado's story was quite interesting. He had no work until we started the Kaduna site. And he came there. And there was this young lady Ado was already eyeing to marry, but he didn't have the money. But Ado told us that he made all the money on that site. He has married his wife. Not only are they married and he's still employed, now there's a young Ado on the way. But that is how initiatives like this can reach some of the most vulnerable people. People you and I ordinarily perhaps will never meet. So that's said. But in the real estate sector, there are opportunities, but let us remember that housing is a product. The federal government does not ordinarily own land. Any land that it takes, it acquires under acquisition by state governments and vested in us. So you will need to work with state governors to find out first how to get land, to also find out what the local community needs, and to be able to see whether you can deliver to the price of their pocket and to the need of their cultural and occupational taste. But the market is open. One of the things that the government has done in support of this is that the president has signed an executive order number 5. What executive order number 5 seeks to address is to localize here the benefits of our investment for skilled and able Nigerians to have top pick of the opportunities that we create here within the value chain of all of what we are doing. Essentially, put in another way, wherever the job can be done by a Nigerian, let him do so. But that is not to exclude foreigners from investing in our land. And I need to emphasize that very, very clearly, that non-Nigerians are welcome to participate. And we have partnerships by which we benefit from international financing and support. But under those partnerships, we have not signed our sovereignty away and our national interest. And that is why you will also see that the country is taking a lot of time, a lot of consultation in ensuring that all of the possible business groups that can be affected are consulted before we sign the African Free Trade Treaty. And this is perhaps the first of its type that you can recollect, that we are asking questions before we sign. What used to happen was that we sign first and think later. But this is the president's and the government's commitment to ensure that we are able to compete, we are able to participate, and we are able to benefit from any multilateral and bilateral agreements that we make. That question addresses the skilled workforce development issue on this agenda, and I think the real estate and infrastructure issues. The matter I will now go to, which is highlighted as an area of priority for this summit. Sadly, power is not here, but I was told it was supposed to take place on the side, but I'll be willing to take questions on that. The other matter is facility management and service. And I think this is a good opportunity to address that. And I'd like to start my conversation first by pointing out that every time you go to the West in Europe, if you take a census of the vehicles that you see, it is my reliable guess that out of every 10 vehicles, you probably see between 3 to 6 vans, whether they are what we call the panel vans or the combi bus. The Ford usually is the prime vehicle. But that is an indication of a maintenance-driven economy. And if you look in these parts of the world, how many of such vans do you see? Now, people have argued that we do not have a maintenance culture. I disagree very, very strongly with that argument. Maintenance is not a culture, it is an economy. And conscious and deliberate policies and efforts must be made to build and allow that economy to thrive. You might ask, why should we do this? In the built industry, the process of design to construction employs just barely about 30% of the entire professional capacity in the built industry. The remaining 70% are employed in operations and maintenance. So if we are building without maintaining, then we are leaving a critical number behind. So I am very pleased, and perhaps I've said to myself internally, this would be one of my biggest, if not the biggest contribution to this government and to the period of my service, if I can deliver on the maintenance framework that we have started working on and almost finished. Let me also say that if you go around this country, you will perhaps see that there is hardly a state that is not undertaking one form of skill training, of skill acquisition program or the other. Artisans at many levels. But because the economy doesn't exist, and the opportunity to put those skills to use is not consciously provided, what do those laborers, welders do? They get on Okada. Because Okada has an economic return almost immediately. But Okada has no skill training center. And so it behoves us to provide the economic return. So we have done a framework for national maintenance that targets 4 main things. First, to get data about all of the assets that government owns. Because government must be run like any other concern. Government always has liabilities, but how many people focus on government's assets? And when you match the assets with the liabilities, you will see, in most cases, the Nigerian government, state governments are functional, viable, going concerns if they focus on the assets that they own. So this program will compel us first to gather data of all of what we have. The other policy objective is to then undertake a condition assessment of all of those assets. And we're starting first with buildings. The next step, of course, will be to now develop a service level agreement. And the final step will be to design and work a maintenance program. What we intend to happen is that my ministry, Power Works and Housing, will be like the consultant to all ministries, departments, and agencies. And our plan is to train every ministry, every department, to undertake their own maintenance, budget for it, and award the procurement and the maintenance and service levels. So we are almost close. We are just going to have a close-up workshop sometime in December, and we're going to council for a council approval for this, and then begin to talk to all of the state governments that this is a model they should think about, adopt, and we should be on our way. What does this do? I have done it at sub-national level in Lagos State Government, and it was an enormous source of opportunity to employ small businesses, plumbers, welders, carpenters, who are contractors of the maintenance and facility management contractors who win the bids. So when you go into a toilet in a public building and it is not usable, it is not because anything is wrong with that toilet. It is because we haven't provided somebody with the responsibility to do that job. And so the value chain is simply enormous if you think about it. From just the 9 buildings that we have looked at, we've taken sample buildings, and we're starting with my ministry's buildings, the powerhouse. We're undertaking a study of the National Hospital as a model for all hospitals that the federal government owns. We have also taken the Abuja High Court as a model for all of the courts, because court buildings also have to be maintained to deliver on their useful life. We have also looked at a federal government college, Kwali, as a model for schools, because the government has federal government colleges across, where in some cases you can't find most of the basic things to use. We have also looked at the Kuje prison as a model for maintaining prisons nationwide, even before we build more. And so these are some of the buildings that we have looked at. Our data gathering has already revealed all of the assets within those buildings to us. An enormous amount of data that I will not bother with here. But interesting thing is that we now know the replacement value of just those 9 buildings. Those 9 buildings will cost us 40.3 billion naira if we were to try to replace them today. Now, interestingly, we budget 3% as the maintenance cost. So instead of spending 40 billion to rebuild those 9 buildings, we will keep them in longevity if we spend roughly about 900 million every year to maintain them. Now, if you go further, what we see is that the economic impact ranges from spare parts to sanitary plumbing and fittings, to architectural finish, to electrical finishes, to heating, ventilation and air conditioning, sewage management, waste management, security, fumigation, landscaping, replacement of parts, and so on and so forth. These are jobs that are waiting to be unleashed, and we're just at the curve. So for those of you who already are accustomed to this kind of thing, we are at the cusp of delivering it, and it is an area which I will urge you to pay a lot of attention. I think those are the main issues I would like to deal with, and hopefully I can respond more specifically, instead of having a monologue, to the questions that agitate your minds. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, sir. A round of applause for the Honorable Minister. I think in this government, if there is any minister that has stood out, is this particular one. I think people have said that he has actually turned Nigeria into a construction site. There is nowhere you go in this country, in any part of the country, in the 6 geopolitical zones, that you will not have infrastructural work going on. So thank you so much, sir. On this note, I would like to invite our convener, the convener of this event, SSA Foreign Affairs and Diaspora, Honorable Abike Dabiri-Erewa. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Let's appreciate our 3 speakers once more. Minister of Agric, Minister of Power Works and Housing, and our keynote speaker, our ambassador from Rwanda. We've learned a lot from Rwanda, but I think the way we're going, Your Excellency, will do better than Rwanda very soon in terms of diaspora. Thank you very much. Now, as they have said, welcome back home. There's so much for you to do in Nigeria. We have challenges as a nation, quite all right, but at the same time, this is the best country to be, the best country to invest in, and a country to be proud of. We haven't said this administration will do everything in a jiffy, but we're making slow and steady progress. And there are opportunities for you, my brothers and sisters in the diaspora, as you have seen, to invest back in your country. So as we move on now, we're going to take questions. Some of you that are agitating to speak, you have the opportunity to ask the minister some questions. But there's one good news from the Minister of Agriculture that he'll tell you himself. He's going to have a diaspora desk in the Ministry of Agriculture as from today, but you'll hear from him. Then the Minister of Power Works and Housing hasn't told me, but I know he's also going to have a diaspora desk in the 3 ministries under him. And of course, we have a diaspora desk in the Ministry of Health, headed by Dr. Lowe. Where is she? And subsequently, I believe every key ministry in Nigeria will have a diaspora desk. But we'll begin the question and answer with, I don't think I told him, but Mr. Honorable Godson. Honorable Godson is the only first black man in Poland to be in the Polish parliament. He's back home and he's into agriculture. I think he's a farmer now. So Honorable Godson, we'll take off with you. Just make your point straight to the point, ask the ministers questions, and then we go on our lunch break and go into breakout session. So Honorable Godson, please come in. Is it rice farming or lake farming or facility? Thank you.
Okay. Your Excellencies, the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of Power, the SSA to the President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Actually, there's been a kind of mix-up because I was asked to exemplify what it means to be a diaspora, someone who has lived abroad and decided to come back to invest in Nigeria. And that is what I'm going to do very briefly. Can you please put on my slide? I traveled to Poland immediately after the fall of communism. I got a job in the university as a lecturer, teaching English as a foreign language. Can you please put on the Pilgrim branch, please? Yes. And so over the years in Poland, I got involved as a social activist, helping people, giving out scholarships. And that was how I was elected as a district councillor and deputy chairman of the district council. And from there, I became a city councillor. And in 2010, I was elected a member of the Polish parliament, the first ever black member of the Polish parliament in Polish history. And after living in Poland for 25 years, my wife is Polish, my children also very Polish. My 2 daughters are married in Poland. But this question, kept coming back. I have done so much for Poland. What can I do in Nigeria? And agriculture being my first degree, and my father also was an agri teacher in the secondary school, I decided that agriculture was the place to go into. And so in 2016, November 2016, exactly 2 years, I came back to start the Pilgrim Ranch. And Honorable Minister, you are talking about goats. And please, back to the slide. You can see the Kalahari red goat there. In the farm, we have Boer goats and so on. So I came back to start the Pilgrim Ranch. Why agriculture? I think it's very important that we ask this basic question. Why agriculture? First of all, there's something we need to understand. Nigeria's population today is almost 200 million. And according to the World Bank, within the next 32 years, our population is going to grow to 420 million. And so that's a lot of people to feed. You can afford not to have a car. You can afford not to, do a lot of things, but you need to eat. And so it is good business because it deals on basic needs of people. And there's a lot of great potential in agriculture. And having lived in Poland for this number of years, I have learned a lot. Poland in the early 1990s was a very poor country. Inflation was like 633%. I was earning more as a research assistant at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, Ibadan, than I was earning in Poland as a senior lecturer in 1993. But today, Poland is the 6th largest economy in the European Union, the 23rd largest economy in the world, because of its emphasis on industry, agriculture. Today, Poland is the largest exporter of apples in the world. It exports poultry and other agricultural produce. So what is Pilgrim Ranch? Pilgrim Ranch is a 608-hectare farm that we started in Abia State. We have 6 sections. We have the livestock section. We have goats, pigs, poultry, dogs, but not for food, but for security. Crops, arable crops, fruits. We have the food processing, and actually our food processing cluster, we're trying to establish it somewhere close to Abuja in Akwanga. We are working on that now. And then agro-tourism and recreation, which is another area we are not really looking into. If you go to places like South Africa, Kenya, Rwanda, they earn a lot of money from agro-tourism. And then research, training, and consultancy. Over the last 1 year, we have organized about 15 training programs across the country with over 200 participants. Now, if I can just talk about the challenges in agriculture, I think it's very important. I think the first thing is funding. Funding is an issue. Finding land is an issue. And adequate government support. I think we need to do more in that area. To conclude, I believe that agriculture is the area to go. And to you, my friends, my brothers and sisters in the diaspora, I would like to encourage you to think about that, because there is a lot of potential in agriculture. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for Ms. A round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful speech. And now is the time that we would like to take questions before for the ministers, for the honorable ministers here. Questions from the audience, please. One of the opportunities of this summit is for, you have the knowledge here, the expertise is here, the technical knowledge and experience. So 4 questions, please.
To identify your number one, because we want to take it once and for all. Number 2, in suit. Oh, you are counting. You are told only 4 questions. Okay. Okay. There is Nido here, Nido Europe. Okay. Can we have the first 4? Can you come out? Oh, okay.
I'll just ask my question over here. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. All protocols observed. My name is Ade Olufeko. I reside in Lagos State. And my question is for the Minister of Power and Minister Fashola, who else also grew up in the same neighborhood as well. Okay. I'm just going to come to the front. Good afternoon, honorables. Question I have is for Minister Fashola. We're talking about data gathering. I'm from the diaspora. I moved back home. And what we've noticed has helped governments move their industry, respective industries forward, is putting the data gathered out there so that investors can see the data you're talking about so they can assist from the private sector to the public sector. It's something that I'm wondering if your team and administration is doing. Thank you very much.
Hello. Hello. I plead to stand on existing protocol. My name is Edward Achado. I'm the director of Benisa Microfinance Bank, and I own a substantial part of the bank. I'm from Benue State. I was quite impressed with what the Minister of Agriculture said. In terms of outreach and assistance to farmers, I would say farmers have been assisted a lot. I saw what happened where some farmers were able to afford cars and they've been farming all year and they've been losing. It's quite embarrassing. So I'd like to encourage them. But microfinance banks have not been carried along in terms of the assistance to the farmers. I know there's the anchor borrowers, but to some extent it has a little bit challenges. It will be appropriate if the microfinance banks are carried along. So if there's a policy as to that or there's some sort of plan, it would really make the job easier for you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed. Question for Chief Aldo Obwe, Honorable Minister for Agriculture. My name is Chike Nweke. I'm part of the Coalition for African Chambers of Commerce in North America. And I've observed, like the Honorable Minister said some months ago, that 30 ships come into this country on a weekly basis, and they leave empty. And there's a provision by the American government called the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA. And I found out shockingly when I came from a delegation, with a delegation from the US, here earlier this year, that Nigeria did less than $5 million in export on AGOA last year. And we have about 6,000 products on AGOA list. Honorable Minister, 6,000 products. And about 1/3 of those products are agricultural products. My question is, what are we doing to meet our AGOA targets and goals, knowing that your goal in the last couple of years have been to revive the agricultural sector and increase exponentially our export in agriculture? Thank you, Honorable Minister.
My name is Godwin Abiodun Oyefeso. I'm a board member of U.S.-Nigeria Trade Council in Atlanta, Georgia. The first question is in the area of export. Government emphasis has been on agri and export. And part of our scheme in the council is to see how we can integrate and make sure export goes to the U.S. This month, I meet with the Commissioner of Agriculture in Georgia Mr. Gary Black. And he said to me, he said, we have people to buy product from Nigeria. Can Nigerian government be trusted? My president is here. He asked him to come along with me. That can Nigerian government be trusted? So that's the first question. How can we assure the international community that people are ready to do business with us? Can the government be trusted? That's number one. Number two, I'm also an exporter and have quite some of my friends here with us. Now, the government said as a way we should move from oil to export. And a lot of agricultural commodities are going out of this country. But the major challenge is the road. As I'm talking to you, I have to off my phone because we've been able to secure some contracts from various countries and give to some serious Nigerians who want to export. But the challenge, as I'm talking to you now, is that some of the containers are right on road. For the past 2 weeks, they could not get into Tinkan Port because of road problem. So what is the government doing to fix the road from that particular Aziz to the Tinkan Port, for God's sake? If you go now, just move from Constin right to Tinkan, you see a lot of containers right lying down on the road. So if you said you secure a contract and you need to get this product to the buyers and you are not getting the product on time, they count you on serious and they cancel the contract. And the same thing is applicable to the issue of cashew. Now, our Honorable Minister was in Vietnam in October. I took 12 investors to Vietnam and we signed a memorandum of understanding with Ho Chi Minh City. Some of those contracts cannot be executed because of problem of getting contracts in place. So please, what I just want to say is that the issue is not the people in Nigeria. Nigerian people are very hardworking people, and investors are ready to do business in Nigeria. But the basic reason, the basic thing is that how sincere are we, how forthright are we, and how diligent are we? Thank you very much.
I think we should just ask our question and then leave the answer to the ministers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes. My name is Mr. Audu Mark Audu. All protocol observed. My question is directed to the Minister of Power, Mr. Fashola. I came from the U.S., resident in Kentucky. My company is on energy. Want to come here to invest on alternative source of power, that is using the solar. And we have done all the feasibility studies. We have got investors, we have got partners. And I was sitting down there, I was expecting when the minister was talking to say things on energy. And he skipped that area. I want to know whether there are no opportunities for us to come and interface with government or not. That is my brief question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All
that's the last one for this. That's the last one for this set.
All protocol observed. I think I just want to start from where the last speaker stopped. Kenneth Ban is my name, the chairperson of NIDO Europe. Honorable Minister for Power. Just like what the last speaker said, one of the major areas where the diaspora, especially the diaspora Europe, they have a very high proficiency is about renewable energy. And I can tell you from my vintage position that we have a lot of diasporas with a lot of very, very interesting concept and project on energy. But apart from very few solar energy farms we have I think somewhere in the western states, they are still finding it very, very difficult to penetrate into the Nigerian market. Where is the problem, Honorable Minister? Thank you.
I think the Honorable Minister will now respond to the questions asked. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will quickly respond to the questions. One of them is about the role of microfinance banks. I think that we will get microfinance banks to work with us once the privatization exercise is concluded, so that there can be outreach, because the country is vast and the Bank of Agri cannot establish a branch in every rural area. We will definitely need you and bring you to operate with us when our interest rate regime is brought to the level where we think the farmers can afford to borrow and pay back. We haven't worked with you because the disparities are too high, and it's extremely difficult for you to lend money to farmers at, say, 5, 6, or 7% per month and expect them to pay back. That can't work. But we'll definitely need you, and we'll come to you shortly. Ships leaving here empty, yeah, that's true. Nigeria has been a nation of importers and traders of virtually everything. And on going back, they have nothing to take. But let me tell you that that situation has changed. Just in July, the Tin Can Island reported that agro exports had gone up 150%. 150%. Now, you mentioned AGOA. For some strange reason, AGOA has never really worked. I don't know what the challenges are. It is under the Ministry of Trade and Investment. But one of the challenges I know confront agricultural exports in this country is the problem of quality control. The marketing boards were abolished in 1974. Farmers complained that the marketing boards were ripping them off. But under the marketing boards, quality control was very, very strict. Since then, nobody has been controlling quality here. So we have a problem. Not long ago, they banned beans from Nigeria being exported to Europe. Why? Weevils. And more recently, you must have heard in the newspapers, or read, people now use sniper to try and preserve beans. Now, sniper is very harmful to the human health. What you can use in preserving beans is pepper. A little cut of pepper in the sack is enough to keep all weevils at bay. But we don't do that here. We go and get chemicals which we put in this stuff. It's the same thing as trying to use a carbide to wash mangoes and make them ripen. Of course, the mango looks very attractive, but it is poisonous. So we've set up a unit in the ministry called the Zero Reject Unit, trying to educate our people that you can't just use any kind of chemical to preserve food crops, expecting people to eat them and not die. We are working very hard on this, but getting the information to traders and hawkers is not very easy here. But we must achieve that, because there is one standard, and it's a universal standard, not a Nigerian standard, an American standard, and so on. So that is one of the challenges we're facing. Quality control. You can ship things from here to the US. If they land there and the Americans find in the laboratories that this contains certain chemical residues or certain matter like insects and so on, they will definitely seize your goods and dump in the sea. But having said that, we recently wanted to export yams. The moment we made the statement, we faced the biggest attack from Nigerians all over on the grounds that, oh, once you export yams, we shall all starve to death. What they don't know, the critics, who always are the city-based, city dwellers, who are the loudest critics, but who unfortunately don't have enough information of what is going on in the rural areas, is that 30% of the yams will grow rot away every year. 30%. By the time new yams arrive on the scene at the end of June, from Ondo, Anambra, Ebonyi, Niger, Benue, there are at least 30% of the old yams still in circulation. But you make one step, and the hostility from our people sometimes is amazing. The presumption being that you don't know anything and that they know everything. We produce 70% of the world's yams, and yet Ghana is famous for the export of yams, not Nigeria. But Nigerians want yams in Texas, in Australia, in Poland, wherever they are, they like to taste their yam. Somebody said that our policy was wrong, that we should reduce it to powder and for pharmaceutical products. Why should I deny you in Poland an opportunity to eat your good old yam if I can export it to you in good shape? So what have we started doing? We have a place in Ekiti now for conditioning yams. We stack the yams, bring the temperature to 14 degrees Celsius, and you can keep the yam for 1 year. We are spreading that around in Benue, in Ekiti, in different places now, so we can preserve our yams. And then we can export our yams. But if you put them in containers, and for any reason the ship is slow to get to UK, within a month the yams will begin to rot. And when they land there, the health authorities in those countries will not accept them. Finally, cashew nuts. I happen to be a cashew farmer. I was in Vietnam. I saw a young man in Vietnam, 52 years old, who has the largest processing outfit in the world. 10 factories, 4,000 women working for him. He earns $250 million a year, and makes a profit of 40%. Most of his cashews come from Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Mozambique and Tanzania, and Guinea-Bissau. But you know what Nigerian traders do? They get orders from Vietnam. Then they buy cashew nuts from the farmers here. Some of them this year did an outrageous thing. They soaked the cashews in water to increase the weight, and then put them in polypropylene bags. And when the cashews arrived in Vietnam, they were rejected. So Nigerian cashews got blacklisted instantly. So we are setting up a committee now to check any cashew going abroad, hoping we can reject all the bad cashew before they get onto the port. But the ultimate dream we have, which this government is doing, we are bringing in 4 large cashew processing factories into the country this year, selling them to Nigerian processors, so we do not have to export raw cashew. In the process, we'll create over 30,000 jobs. I'm a cashew farmer myself. I have 14,000 trees on one farm and 15,000 trees on another. But I'm exporting raw cashews because I have no processing facility. Meanwhile, Walmart gave us an order for cashews to the tune of $4 billion if we can supply. And we cannot. So it goes back to what I said earlier. Where do you get credit to invest? These machines will cost $1 million. Each of them will create at least in the factory 500 or 600 jobs for women mainly, because they are the most skilled in peeling the cashew when it comes from the crackers. Then you press the cashew nut shell and extract the cashew nut shell liquid. It's an industrial chemical. We waste all that by exporting the raw nuts. Our strategy, therefore, is to process here and then control the quality at home. The best cashew we have today is from Ogbomoso. The largest quantity is from Kogi. We're going to aggregate all that now and begin to roast. There is the cashew factory in Enugu, the cashew farm at Oge, which Michael Okpara built. Today, nobody is harvesting them. I've been there, and I'm talking to the governor of Enugu that we should now go into processing. So we're going to put one of those plants in Enugu. The processes are slow because, don't forget this, oil and gas did a lot of good for Nigeria, but it also did a lot of damage. We caught what they call the Dutch disease. We forgot everything else because importation was the only answer. Go to your house when you live here. Look around your house. How many items in your house are made in Nigeria? Check. How many items in your living room are made in Nigeria? That is the damage we suffered from the fortune called oil and gas. We are trying to reverse it. It's not going to happen overnight, but we definitely must take advantage of the export opportunities we have. And I assure you, as we move along, finding credit for people, we'll get to do that. You mentioned the roads. What Fashola is doing on the roads is massive, but the country is big. The roads are many. Many of them belong to state governments. Many belong to local governments. And the local government system, without being unfair, is dead. Local governments have died in your country. They don't do any work. They don't do their roads. They don't do water for their people. They don't do anything. And that's one of the issues that we have to deal with. Because Fashola cannot do all local government roads. He can't. He doesn't have the budget. I have found myself grading roads for communities to allow trucks to get to my farm. Even drainages are not done. We can't hide anything. We're telling you the truth. And as you come back and invest, let me also give you one warning. The staff you employ will become a bit of a problem. You have to select them carefully. Many of them have the mentality that because you are from the diaspora, you have a warehouse full of dollars, and therefore the money can't be exhausted. So they will pinch your stuff. They will show infidelity. Many of them will be dishonest in their dealings with you, and you'll be shocked. So you have to do your selection carefully and watch them rigorously and keep your books, because there's no point coming in, investing and losing everything you saved from over there. Many of you do 3 jobs to try and save money, which you send home. I'm telling you what we see. I'm telling you what I've seen for nearly 40 years. So when you invest, watch. Be very prudent. Like the gentleman from Poland said, the biggest opportunities for investment and for making a good fortune in Nigeria now lie in agriculture. I will announce in the next few days the diaspora desk, the officer in charge, his phone number, and his email address. We are also building a website where every information on agriculture in Nigeria will be available for you to access. If you have challenges for land, with land acquisition, let us know. We can help you speak to your state governors. The federal government has no land of its own. If you have challenges with credit, give us a short while. In another 90 days, the Bank of Agriculture will be ready for you. But please also become a shareholder. Then you can come to the AGM and make your point and criticize. And we can decide each year whether interest rates should go up or come down. But we intend and insist, as directed by Mr. President, that agriculture will be a success story in this country. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much for that answering those questions. And we will now have the Honorable Minister Babatunde Fashola takes his own answers.
Okay, the first intervention was about sharing data, and we put as much data as we think is helpful to the public on our website. Some of them are not directly on the website of the ministry, but you will find links to many other of the agencies, all of who are connected to us. For example, I can share with you that there is data for about 300 communities on the website of the Rural Electrification Agency. Rural Electrification Agency. And this is data we have gathered about communities that are ready, willing to buy power through mini-grid suppliers. We have also enunciated a mini-grid policy that is now supported by regulation by the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission. we must all remember that by the time this government took office, the substantial part of the electricity value chain had been privatized, generation and distribution. What the government is responsible for now is the transmission. Let me use the opportunity to also address the related questions of renewable energy, alternative energy, and some of the nomenclature that have characterized that part of our discussion. And to say that although those things appear to mean or intend the same thing, they are not necessarily the same. This country has been in the forefront of renewable energy before it became fanciful lately. And if you doubt me, just think back of the investments that Nigeria had made in the past in projects like Kainji Hydropower Dam, Jeba Hydropower Dam, Shiroro Hydropower Dam, and so many other hydropower dams, and she continues to make in Zungeru and soon enough in Mambila. So renewable energy is not new to us. What is perhaps gaining currency is renewable energy from solar. And I think we need to make that point very clear. And it is a space in which our government is consciously playing. First, by being a party to the Paris Climate Change Agreement. Secondly, by coming back home to enunciate policies that seek to reduce the cost of doing business in that space. There is policy through from government, through the Ministry of Trade and its parastatals, for granting pioneer status to those who want to make solar components, solar panels, lithium batteries, and all of the components that drive that type of energy, where you kind of have a 5-year holiday, pioneer status, if you manufacture in Nigeria. That policy exists, and there are also duty concessions for those who import. So that is something that is already in place. I did not speak in detail about power, not that I did not mention it, and I said I would rather address your questions than to have a monologue on power. Now, somebody then asked the question, and let me say quickly, that you must distinguish here between power on grid and power off grid. And the easiest way and the quickest way, really, to allow small and medium-sized businesses, entrepreneurs like you into the space is the mini grid policy that we have enunciated, so that you can find customers who are willing to buy power from you and you can sell to them on a bilateral basis. And the mini grid policy recognizes this as an active commitment of government to improve access to power. Now, people have asked, what is the problem? There is no problem on our side. We have done essentially all that we need to do. If there is anything that we are missing, as I said to an investment group in Johannesburg a couple of days back, bring it up to us. Don't assume that those of us here, we're not the smartest. We're just the ones who got picked. And within what we know, we have enunciated policies to open up the space. But if you as the entrepreneur see something that we are missing, escalate to us, we will look at it. And if it requires legislative intervention, I have offered myself, I will be the champion of pushing those policies to Parliament to get legislation that may be needed. But But I see from what I get, almost on a daily basis, people say to me, oh, our business partner wants to come to Nigeria. He wants to come and meet with you. And I say, why? Why should a businessman who wants to sell energy need to meet with the Minister for Energy? Because the sector has been privatized. So if you want to manufacture cell phones here, do you need to meet the Minister for Communication? And so I urge people to first read the law. And if you can't decipher the law, take legal advice before you prepare your business case and your business model. What you need to generate energy in Nigeria is a generation license. The minister does not issue that license. What you need to get a generation license includes land. The minister does not give land. What you need to raise money to make your project viable and bankable is a power purchase agreement. The minister does not sign power purchase agreements. It is the bulk trader, Nigeria Bulk Electricity Trading Company, who signs that agreement. So why are you coming to my office? And I think this point must be made very clear. And I have tried to also make this point, that my role now is policy. If you now have a problem with any of the agencies who should give you a license, who should give you a power purchase agreement, write to me. I will intervene, because they are supposed to execute the policies that we have put in place. But let me say that some of the business models are based on the assumptions, first, that Nigeria will sign a bulk power agreement. And some of the cases we have seen is that Embed, as a bulk trader, looks at his balance sheet and says, I am ready to buy power only at this price. An investor brings his power at a price above Embed's own. In a free market, Embed is able to say, I can't afford your power. And that does not mean government is not working. That simply means that you should look for another buyer. Indeed, Embed, as bulk trader, does not need the energy. It is the Nigerian people who need the energy. So why are all of the business models based on government buying the power, when we, the people of Nigeria, have asked government to leave the power sector to market forces of demand and supply? And the question to ask is, those who sell generators, they don't go to government for any guarantees. What they bring to you when they come to you is not even energy. They don't sell you a molecule of energy. They sell you a plant, and they leave you to go and buy your fuel to put in the machine to create energy. And you start generating your own energy at about 100 to 120 naira per kilowatt hour. So if I am a businessman, that is my how to get their product to the market. Because as a matter of national policy, we have said energy is free. Go and sell, subject to regulation. The areas apart from mini grids, apart from solar and all of that, where there is an opportunity, is also the supply of manufacturing and installation of meters. We have a gap to cover. The gap, as at the last check, was at least 3 million households that need to be metered. Now, the discos who bought the assets have a contract to supply meters, but they are struggling with access to capital to fund the supply of meters. What have we done? We have created a new class of licensees called meter asset providers with regulation to allow you work with a disco of your choice if you have the ability to bring meters to the market, to make them or to supply them at affordable cost. Apply to NERC. NERC is the licensor of those. This is not the minister. So I can't give you a license to supply meter. Only NERC can do so. Just as it is only NCC that licenses and operates the communication system. So that's the model that we have chosen. At the moment, there are about 100 and something companies who have applied, because I keep a tab of what is going on so that I know how far our policies are being implemented. And the businesses who have applied, by the 108 that NERC is working with, now we now need them to bring agreements with their discos as to how this will happen and to raise capital. So that is an area of opportunity. Another area of opportunity is that we are currently able to generate 7,000 megawatts of energy today. If the demand was there, we will put it on. But the demand is only averaging about 5,000 megawatts at peak because of distribution equipment problem. That again is the responsibility of the businessmen who own the discos. I see opportunities for partnerships, either to invest in discos using assets. If you, for example, manufacture transformers, if you manufacture breakers, if you manufacture meters, or if you have partners who do so, I see an opportunity for a technical partnership within with those kind of investors, investing some of their goods because it gets the inventory out, and using it to build the supply and distribution capacity of the discos in order to get revenues. Those are opportunities that I encourage discos to look at in terms of getting technical support, so that it is not all, in all cases, that they have to fork out the cash to buy something. But that is where we are today. Our capacity to generate is increasing, and we need to ramp up the capacity to distribute the energy. But that is on the on-grid side. On the off-grid side, we have, as I said, opened up players on the mini-grid market. So with mini-grids, for example, now, we see people playing in markets. So we have investors who have said, okay, I want to do area market. I have gone to survey area market. And with government support behind that person, simply calling the governor of Abia, can you provide land? And he says yes. Who are the heads of the market groups and the market clusters? He brings them to a meeting and we say, investor, these are your customers. Talk to them and agree a deal. We've signed a deal now with an investor, not government money. He has built the gas plant. He has installed about 100 transformers of 150 MVA round area market. So the plan is to electrify 37,000 shops in area market in Aba. 4,000 have already been connected. And the similar thing is happening in Sabon Gari market using solar panels on top of the market. These are initiatives we supported with small businesses, entrepreneurs, getting them working with the state government to see. And we've done the same thing in Lagos. That was the first to switch on in Sura market, where 1,047,000 shops now have uninterrupted power. And this is going on in markets across the country. But there's a scope to play beyond markets. There are farm settlements who need energy to process all of these things we're talking about. And these are places to play. So instead of everybody coming to government, go to where the need is. Because in all of those markets, in all of those communities, they're buying small generators, small powers that you can supply and you can provide cheaper, cleaner, and more efficiently. That is where the market is, not inside the Ministry of Power, Works, and Housing. Now, the last matter I wish to respond to is the problem of roads, and particularly access to port roads. Yes, the road provides some difficulty for exporters and importers, but with respect, it is not the cause of the problem. It is not the cause of the problem. But before I come to that explanation, let me tell you what we are doing. What we are doing now is that we have partnered with the Dangote Group using our tax credit incentive to approve the award of the construction, entire reconstruction of the Apapa Urushoki Road, passing through Tinkan, Coconut, Mile 2, Oshodi, all the way to the toll gate. So that started, we flagged that up about 2 weeks ago after about 9 months of procurement compliance. So the road will be built with hard concrete and should give us a useful lifespan. But I tell you one thing, unless we do what is necessary to expand the capacity of the port, the congestion will not go away. That port was built, I think, in 1918. It was expanded in 1975-76 in the aftermath of the Civil War, when we were undertaking national reconstruction, when we imported so much cement. This has happened before, so it's not new. Those of you who are old enough will remember the cement armada. It was in that port. And the only expansion that took place was to Tinkan Island. But since the 70s, 40 years after, where is the expansion? So the port capacity has been surpassed by the size of the growth of our population and our economy. What you see there is trucks standing on the road. Trucks don't want to stand on the road. They want to enter a port. So think through it. Don't jump at what is obvious. Think through it. What are those trucks doing there? They want to enter a port. The reason why they are standing on the road is access into that port is constrained by something. It's constrained by size. That's the logic. Yes, there's a bad road. It adds to the problem. It is not the cause of the problem. But this government has put a fix to it, and this is the first fix you will have to that road in decades. The road has never been good in the last 10 years or so. I was governor there. And if you go back, you will see engagements that we had with the federal government when we were on the other side and nothing got done. But this government has put a fix that will reconstruct that road once and for all. That road was built to evacuate the port in the 70s, and we just allowed it to deteriorate. But the thing to take away is that we are intervening, we have a solution, we have started to implement it. The only thing we don't control is the time, the man hours to take to build it. But that is not all. We are now facilitating the expansion of new ports and the developments of new ports in Lekki and Badagry. That is the long-term and the enduring solution. And for those who still might find it difficult to wrap their minds around that, there used to be a time when the only place, airport, an international flight could land in Nigeria was in Lagos. So if you are going to Abuja, if you are going to Port Harcourt, you had to board another flight. The solution was to create more airports and to disaggregate the capacity. And it is no less true of a seaport as it is true of an airport. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We thank our Honorable Minister for that wonderful response. We will take another last round of the questions. But before then, we would like to take the comment from the Minister of Health. Oh, last round of the question. Okay. Last round of the question, please kindly indicate. Yes, one. One, you can come, sir. 2, 3, and 4. Okay. 5 and 6. Okay. Can you just come out and then you are number 6, sir. Number 1.
Your Honorable Minister, sir, the Minister of Agriculture. Not exactly in the form of a question, just to reinforce what you've said, sir. I live in Brazil, and I'm here with the president of NIDO Brazil, and we also came with an investor from Brazil. I just want to say that we have a lot to learn from Brazil in agriculture, and I remember the minister coming to Sao Paulo, and he spoke to us on that. Sir, the good news is to say that Brazil has just recently launched this equipment you just talked about. The president and I traveled to the factory to see the qualities of the products, and we can assure you, sir, that anytime we are called upon, we'll be ready to serve. Thank you, sir.
Number 2.
Yeah, my question is to the Honorable Minister of Works. His Excellency Fashola.
Please, you can speak.
My name is, I am Dr. Leke Oshikuton. I'm from New York State Department of Transportation. Basically, I think I'm going to address the issue of the port tomorrow, but basically my question to the Honorable Minister is about mobility and accessibility. You know, most of our emphasis has been on design and construction. When we design, we construct the road. We say, oh, we got a good highway, a good roadway, but there are some impacts to that roadway. And this is based on the right of way, most especially on our expressways. I have written a lot of articles, particularly when you were the governor of Lagos State. So on our highways, the right of way need to be determined, because in any construction of a road, people try to go, it attracts land use. But we need land use control on the highway. We don't just want the design or the building of the roads, because over time, it will be impacted and it will affect mobility. For instance, let me give you an example, the gas stations, that is petrol stations. They are on the expressway. They design the petrol stations. The petrol station will be adjacent to the expressway, and that should not be that way. The petrol station should go directly, creating an highway, I mean a road, a lane, before merging into the highway. So we need land use control on all the corridors of the highway. Otherwise, it won't last. I mean, our highway will not last. So that will not affect congestion. So definitely mobility is the key. Thank you, sir.
Number 3.
My question goes to the Honorable Minister of Agri. I'm Dr. Fatima, Vice President, Nigeria and Diaspora Asia. Sir, my question is going to you, and equally, thank you for the privilege anyway, but my words is that the Asia, we the Asians, and we have come with the organic fertilizer. You've been talking about the farming and what is happening in our crops. We find out that most of the food we produce in other countries are being rejected because of the fertilizers we're using. So now we came with investors on organic fertilizers. We have the herbicide, and we also have a chemical that can spray and kill the grasses while the crop is still growing. So, sir, if you can give us the opportunity, we have the products, we came with the products that we want to show you, and we are looking for opportunity to invest here in Nigeria so that we can be able to have organic fertilizer, that our crops are vegetable, we can be able to produce 3 or 4 times per season. And then we have the cider side, which we have come with it, and the investors are really ready to invest here in Nigeria. Thank you, sir.
Number 4.
Your Excellencies, all protocols are duly observed. My name is Engineer Biodun Ogunshakin. I'm from Europe, based in UK, into power generation. I'm also the General Secretary to NIDO, a Nigerian Diaspora Organization in Europe. Actually, the Honorable Minister of Power, Works and Housing said something that was very critical to me. He said, when you structure your business model, you need to actually understand how the system works. We've been out of the country. Really, we have this very big challenge. I came in with a very robust power generation system that could solve a lot of problems in Nigeria. But the way we were structured, we actually came to actually work with the federal government. We came in and realized the regulation and stuff like that. But however, if I can have the opportunity of putting in some things. There are some things that are left out during that process that actually incapacitate the Nigeria entity in being able to engage the kind of power solutions that can work in a very highly efficient way, not just taking up a market or taking up an estate or taking up a group of people, really engaging in resolving the high-level power challenge we have. We said we generate 7 megawatt, we can transmit 5 megawatt, gigawatt, which is 1,000 megawatts. However, in terms of demand, Nigeria actually requires up to 150 gigawatt, which is 150,000 megawatts. Sorry in numbers, but don't go. But the reason for that is that you can see the high gap, but a larger percentage of that is being generated individually by people with generators and stuff. People don't want to use generators, sir. People want to be we don't want to be buying fuel to use generators, but we have to be doing it. So there is another perspective that we're bringing into this. If I can have the opportunity, because I don't want to go too much into technical detail here, there is a key thing that will just drop, which is the ability of the government at the federal level to help.
Please go straight to the point and ask your questions.
In the aspect of guarantees, there are money, there are facilities that can come into power, but the kind of market we deal with, they cannot guarantee the kind of credit that we are getting that money from. I wish the Honorable Minister of Finance is here, but I will leave the other side of it.
Thank you very much. I think it's important that people keep to time, at least 2 minutes, and then go straight to the
question. Thank you. My name is Dr. Tony Okoye. I'm the National Strategic Program Manager for the Nigerian Medical Association. I want to appreciate the ministers, Agric and Power Housing, for these wonderful presentations. Just a quick one to the Minister for Power. You're talking about the expansion of the ports in Lagos. Are there plans to expand towards the east-west ports, the Calabar-Dione port? Because, it will actually, I think it will be faster to ease off the congestion along the Lagos-Lekki axis. It's not easy getting to, expanding that area. Then the final question I have for the SSA, the organizer for the summit. Do we have the one-stop shop talked about where businesses can be registered quickly as component of this 3 days program? I hope. One-stop shop for business registration, which the government of the day is promoting as component of this 3-day event, so that we can be able to do some quick one. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, all protocols observed. Onyekachi Wambu from the African Foundation for Development. We have been supporting diaspora businesses, and so we really welcome this intervention because we've been doing this since 1994 and pioneered a lot of the work in this area. Currently, we're supporting 13 Nigerian businesses to invest in Nigeria, and the challenges they're facing is the ones that you've mentioned, Minister Agriculture, around skills. And they're trying to create value chains from the UK. There's a young man in Lagos who is trying to get data writers who can allow him to create a value chain all the way to London, but there's a problem with finding skilled people here. And my question is, what are we doing to encourage TEVIT, particularly TEVIT skills?
Thank you. A polite reminder, please, people should just go straight to the question. Thank you.
Standing on the existing protocol, I'm Dr. Richard Okoye. I've actually, I saw this as a very great opportunity to let us know what is available also in the sector. Interesting thing, we've spoken about power, spoken about agriculture, but I would like us to think about the population of Nigeria, 200 as we are taking it right now, 200 million. And it's stated by World Health Organization that one doctor should represent 600 patients or 600 people in the population. But here we have one doctor to 6,000 people, which is a very huge opportunity. I run a health
outfit in Port Harcourt and in other states. We have about 150 bedded hospitals there. We currently have patients from US, UK coming to the hospital here in Nigeria based on the study I had in US concerning their healthcare system. I made opportunity. I saw it as an opportunity and I asked, instead of waiting for 6 months.
Sorry, sir. Please go straight to your questions to save time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Keeping on for to be more on healthcare services, insurance. Why not come over here? We can get those things done. What I'm trying to say, there's a huge opportunity, investment opportunity in healthcare industry. If you are not healthy, you can't do agriculture. If you are not healthy, you can't go for power.
Please, a polite reminder. Ask your questions to save our time.
I just
Thank
want to
you.
bring that as an awareness, as a huge opportunity also in Nigeria. So we're looking at power and agriculture. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ernest Akinlola. I'm the MD, CEO of Entel, formerly known as Nitel. I just want to today very briefly buttress the points from our Excellencies and those very inspiring speeches. As you might be able to tell from my accent, I'm also a diasporan that returned back to Nigeria. I love Nigeria. I'm now running one of our major companies. And I would just like to emphasize to those Nigerians in diaspora that there is a phenomenal opportunity in the ICT sector along with agriculture. There's agri-tech, there's edu-tech. There's so much happening in Nigeria right now that I think that this is definitely the place to be. So I just want to really buttress what our leaders have said today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we'll now take the next one from the ministers.
Okay, I think that there were basically a few interventions here. Mobility and accessibility, very well taken. Our right of way is 45.72 meters from the center line. A lot of that right of way has been leased out, and what we seek to do is to gradually begin to recover them, and that is a long and involved process of consultation in order to elicit voluntary compliance, and we are making progress in that line. I really couldn't figure out what the second intervention was, except I picked up general allusions to power solutions and also that they were in need of guarantees. Again, I reiterate my position. Federal government has bought a substantial amount of power from generation companies, some of which it is now challenged to sell. We think that the long-term solution is for power producers to get to the market, to the communities that need them in the way that their competitors have done. We make ourselves ready and willing to assist those who want to go that way, because as I said earlier, it is the people that need the power, not the government. And government has only tried to stay in an enabling role with agencies like MBED to guarantee that if you produce some amount of power, you will get paid for it. Using other ports, again, there are processes in place. Those ports exist. Some of them are constrained. Calabar Port, for example, is constrained by the overhead bridge around it, so we have to replace and rebuild that to allow the headroom for vehicles with containers to pass through. Then a number of them need to be dredged to the appropriate draft level to allow bigger vessels to carry more cargo through them. At the moment, only a few barges who require very minimum draft of 3 to 5 meters or thereabouts are able to easily navigate through those channels. But I am aware that the Ports Authority, through the Ministry of Transportation, is looking at plans to dredge those ports. Just for your information, my ministry is Power, Works and Housing, largely building the assets and infrastructure. Transportation is the supervising ministry for MPA, but I try just to make sure that I know what other departments are doing so that I can respond to their needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Just very briefly, let me talk about Brazil. We look up to Brazil for a lot of solutions to our problems because just 35 years ago, Brazil faced exactly the same kind of problems we're facing now. Right now, we have an arrangement with Brazil called the More Food Program, and we are likely to procure some equipment from Brazil, harvesters, planters, and things like that. Brazil's agriculture has grown really huge. Brazil, by the way, is 9 times the size of Nigeria. 9 times. One state in Brazil called Mato Grosso do Sul is the size of Nigeria. One state. But it has only 3 million people inside. A state the size of Nigeria has 3 million people, but 30 million cows. What they do there, and the kind of research that Brazil has gone into in agriculture through their Embrapa Institute, is something we haven't done much of here, but we're working on that now. The Nigerian Agriculture Research Council is going to be changed into a huge research council like Brazil, India, or China. We'll be in Brazil probably, if campaigns allow, early in January to sign some agreements and try and get into some closer cooperation with Brazil. We do the same with India and China and also with Europe. Now for investment opportunities, they are here. The question raised by one of our brothers about skills is quite important, but the issue is not necessarily that of skills alone. It is that of attitude and aptitude. A lot of our boys can learn very quickly. I went to a farm in Anambra owned by Coscharis, Maduka, the guy who sells BMW cars. He has one of the largest rice farms in the country. And the boy who was operating the combine harvester, the case combine, drove close to us and parked, jumped down from the seat, and came to greet me in my language. And I asked him, but you are from where? And he said, I'm from your village. I asked him, who taught you how to operate a combine harvester? He just laughed. He said he learned it on the farm because the importer from the US who sold it to Coscharis sat there for 2 weeks and taught him how to run it. The problem you're going to face with some of our young boys and some girls whom you employ is that of an attitude that doesn't recognize that fidelity to your employer is an important issue. So you see people pinching things and not coming to work and showing general indiscipline. That's far more serious than the lack of skill. Because then some of them do things that hurt the company, not recognizing that they're bringing down the enterprise. So when you employ them, sit them down, talk to them, orient them, because your success depends a lot on what they do or fail to do. Finally, you mentioned something about health, the doctor. Yes, you're right. I was in my village and I went to the local hospital and I asked the doctor there, what are the commonest diseases here? And he said to me, cholera, typhoid, and malaria. Cholera, typhoid and malaria. Now, cholera and typhoid are basically caused by, I think, water problems. Malaria is by the notorious mosquito. Now, if people have these ailments and they are constantly in the hospitals, their energy and capacity to work is diminished. I asked the Minister of Health in our cabinet, and he said to me, yes, if you can eliminate these 3 diseases here, 60% of the patients in our hospitals will not need to go there. So you're right. How then do we help you build a hospital? I am not too sure. I can't say anything categorical here. But I'm sure that in the not too distant future, we may have to do what India does. India has wooed their diaspora experts back to India, helped them acquire land, secure cheap loans, and build huge hospitals which have turned around to earn massive sums of money for the Indian government. A friend of mine went there for a neurosurgery in India. And the owner of the hospital told him he was working in the US. And the Indian government called him and said, why don't you come home and build a hospital? And he said, I have no money. And he said, and I have no land. And he said, don't worry, on the outskirts of Delhi, we'll give you a plot. And if money is your problem, we'll get you a loan. The gentleman built a hospital in which there are 25 operating theaters. And people fly, even from the US sometimes, and other parts of the world, to obtain services. I think before long, such policies will begin to happen here. I can't tell you when, but I'm sure that we have enough experts. They say 25,000 Nigerian doctors operate abroad. If that is so, I think before long we have to do the same. Because frankly, our people deserve better health, and we can save a lot of money by cutting down on traveling to other countries to receive attention. Finally, let me thank all of you. Like I said, when you go back, tell the Nigerians in the diaspora that we really, really appreciate what you've done today and what you do when we come round to different parts of the world. You receive us, you take us to your homes, you look after us, and this passion for home really gets deep into some of the hearts of many of us who feel that, frankly, you are a huge asset which we must begin to tap into. Thank you very much, and God bless you all for your coming.
Thank you.
We will keep our contacts with you and work together. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Another round of applause for the Honorable Minister. Well, there is a representative of the Minister of Health here, a person of Dr. Omobola Leolu, who just talked to us briefly as part of her goodwill message. Dr. Leolu, please.
Told you about